at 8,336 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, a camera recorded something that should not be alive. A small, pale, almost transparent fish, drifting calmly through water so deep that no sunlight has touched it for millions of years, in pressure that would crush a submarine flat. It has no scales, no color, a skull you can see straight through, and it is not struggling. It is not dying. It is hunting. This is the deepest fish ever filmed alive on planet Earth, living at a depth where every rule of biology says a backbone simply cannot exist. For the next 40 minutes, you are going to descend to meet it, and then keep going past the fish into a place even it cannot survive, where the last living things on Earth are waiting in total darkness. What lives at the very bottom is stranger than any fish. But to understand why it is so terrifying, you first have to feel what the ocean does to a body on the way down. We start at the surface, in the warm, bright water where almost all ocean life lives. Sunlight, fish, coral, everything you picture when you think of the sea. Now we go down. At 200 meters, the first thing to die is the light. The reds vanish first, then orange, then yellow. The world turns a deep, cold blue. This is the twilight zone. Below it, at 1,000 meters, the blue itself gives out. From here to the bottom, the only light is the light that living things make themselves. And the pressure is already building. At 1,000 meters, the water pushes on every surface with the weight of 100 atmospheres. 100 times what you feel right now, standing in air. Here live the monsters of the deep that everyone knows. The anglerfish with its glowing lure, the gulper eel, the viperfish, nightmares with teeth. But here is the truth nobody tells you. This is the shallow end. And all around us, something is falling. A soft, constant snow of white flakes, drifting down through the black. It is marine snow, the remains of everything that dies in the sunlit water far above. Dead plankton, scales, waste, dust. It falls for weeks to reach the bottom, and it is the only food most of the deep sea will ever get. Everything down here is waiting for that snow. There are no plants, no sunlight means no plants, so there is no bottom to the food chain except death raining down from above. The deep ocean is a world that eats the corpses of the world of light. And once in a while, a feast arrives. When a whale dies, its enormous body sinks, a single event scientists call a whale fall. For years, an entire ecosystem blooms around that one carcass, deep in the dark. Hagfish, then crabs, then worms, then bacteria, stripping it down over decades. One death feeding thousands of lives in a place that is otherwise starving. Some creatures spend their whole existence drifting between these fallen giants, waiting for the next one. An animal might grow up, reproduce, and die between two whale falls. Its entire life shaped by the random death of a creature it never met, thousands of meters above. It is also almost completely silent and cold, a constant 1 to 4 degrees above freezing, everywhere, forever. No seasons, no day, no night. A creature born here could live a century and never once experience change. We are not even close to the bottom. The anglerfish lives in the comfortable, easy part of the deep sea. Below it, the water keeps going down, 4,000 meters, 6,000, 8,000, into a region so extreme it has its own name, the hadal zone, named after Hades, the underworld. It begins at 6,000 meters and drops to nearly 11,000. And almost nothing you have ever heard of can follow us down there. The hadal zone is not one place. It is a scatter of deep trenches around the world, narrow gashes in the seafloor, mostly ringing the Pacific. The Mariana, the Kermadec, the Japan Trench, the Tonga, isolated valleys of crushing dark, cut off from each other by kilometers of shallower water. And because they are isolated like islands but inverted islands of depth, Each trench has evolved its own creatures. A snailfish in the Mariana Trench is a different species from the one in the Kermadec. They have been separated so long, by walls of water they cannot cross, that they have become strangers. It means every single trench is its own hidden world, with its own inhabitants, most of which we have never seen. There are dozens of these trenches. We have properly explored only a handful, because at these depths, the ocean stops being cold and dark. It becomes something that actively tries to destroy the body of anything that enters it. And the weapon it uses is pressure. Let me show you what pressure actually does. At the depth where our fish lives, 8,000 meters, the water presses down with the force of 800 atmospheres. Scientists send styrofoam cups down on the outside of their landers. They come back the size of a thimble, the air inside crushed out of them completely. A human chest would collapse the same way in less than a second. This is why we cannot simply swim down here. It is why only a handful of humans have ever reached the bottom, sealed inside spheres of steel and titanium as thick as a bank vault door. The first two men to reach the very bottom did it in 1960, inside a cramped steel sphere called the Trieste. On the way down, at around 9,000 meters, they heard a sharp crack echo through the cabin. A thick outer window had fractured under the pressure. They were still kilometers from the bottom. They kept going anyway. When they finally landed on the floor of the Challenger Deep, one of them, Jacques Picard, looked out and saw a flatfish glide across the bottom. Life at the deepest point on Earth. That single sighting has been argued about for 60 years, but it planted the question that still drives every expedition. How deep does life go? To feel the pressure at the bottom, imagine balancing the weight of 50 large passenger jets on the surface of a single fingertip. That is what the water presses onto every square inch of anything down there. And yet, impossibly, things live in it. But the real damage of pressure is invisible. It does not just crush from the outside. It reaches inside every cell and attacks the machinery of life itself. The proteins that build you, move you, keep you alive. Proteins are folded into precise shapes, and those shapes are what let them work. Immense pressure squeezes them, deforms them, unfolds them. At a certain depth, the proteins of a normal animal simply stop functioning. The body at the molecular level falls apart, and this creates something astonishing, an invisible wall in the ocean, a depth below which no fish, anywhere on Earth, can survive. Scientists predicted it before they ever found it. The math said no fish could live below about 8,200 meters. Deeper than that, the pressure would wreck their proteins faster than anybody could repair them. And for decades, every expedition confirmed it. Below that line, the fish vanished. For years, one team led the hunt for that limit, dropping cameras into trench after trench, all around the Pacific, trying to film the deepest fish that existed. Each expedition pushed a little further down. Each time they found fish right up to about 8,000 meters and then nothing. Then, in 2022, off the coast of Japan in the Izuogasawara Trench, one of their cameras caught it. A young snailfish, swimming calmly at 8,336 meters. The deepest a fish has ever been seen alive, and almost certainly brushing against the absolute limit of where a fish can exist at all. The scientists knew immediately what they were looking at. Somewhere just below that fish, maybe a few hundred meters deeper, is a hard floor for all vertebrate life. A depth where no amount of chemical armor is enough, and the backbone's reign over the planet finally ends. So the question became, how does our fish, the ghost at 8,300 meters, live right at the edge of that wall in a place chemistry says should kill it? The answer is a molecule, and it is hiding in your kitchen right now. Have you ever noticed that fishy smell? That specific ocean fish odor? You are smelling the exact chemical that makes life in the deep possible. It is called TMAO. TMAO is a small molecule that deep-sea fish pack into their bodies. And it does something remarkable. It braces their proteins from the inside, holding them in the correct shape and stopping the pressure from crushing them out of function. The deeper a fish lives, the more TMAO it carries. Shallow fish have a little. Deep fish are saturated with it. It is chemical armor against the crushing dark. But here is the twist that reveals the fish line. TMAO does not just protect proteins, it also changes the chemistry of the fish's body fluids. And if you keep adding more and more of it, deeper and deeper, you eventually hit a point where the fish's body would become chemically unstable. Its cells would start pulling in water from the ocean until they burst. Scientists ran the numbers. The amount of TMAO a fish would need to survive gets so high that, at roughly 8,200 to 8,400 meters, its body simply cannot hold any more without destroying itself. The chemical armor has a maximum thickness, and that maximum is exactly where the deepest fish is found. Think about what that means. Our snailfish is not just deep. It is living at the precise mathematical edge of what a vertebrate body can chemically survive. One layer of the molecule away from oblivion. It exists in the thinnest possible margin between life and dissolving into the sea. And our snailfish carries more than almost any animal alive. Its tissues are so loaded with TMAO that they take on a soft, gelatinous, jelly-like texture. Part of why it looks so ghostly and strange. It has traded a normal body for one that can bend the rules of pressure. Look closely at it. Its bones are thin and half-formed, flexible instead of hard, because rigid bone would shatter. The skin is loose and translucent. Its stomach can be seen through its body. This is not a fish that adapted to the deep. This is a fish rebuilt for it from the molecule up. There is more than one of these ghosts. In the Mariana Trench, scientists have filmed several kinds, including one so pale and delicate it was nicknamed the ethereal snailfish, a fish that looks less like an animal and more like a drifting spirit caught on camera. For years it was seen but never caught, a phantom at the edge of the lights. Shaped a little like a tadpole, with a broad head and a tapering, fin tail, the deepest snailfish glide rather than dart. They have no swim bladder, the gas-filled organ most fish use to float, which would be crushed useless at these depths. Instead, their jelly-soft bodies are naturally close to the density of the water itself, so they hang in the black, almost weightless, drifting on the faintest current. Everything a normal fish relies on, hard bone, a swim bladder, sharp eyes, a firm body, has been thrown away or rebuilt. What remains is something that looks fragile and is, in truth, one of the most perfectly engineered survivors on the planet. Its eyes are tiny and nearly useless. In permanent darkness, sight is pointless. Instead, its face is covered in sensory pores that feel the faintest movement in the water. It hunts by touch and by vibration, in a world of absolute black. There is something almost tender about how it moves, slow, unhurried, drifting rather than swimming. In the deep, energy is precious. There is so little food that panic itself is a luxury no animal can afford. Everything down here moves like it has all the time in the world, because it does, and its body holds one more secret. To keep its cells running under such pressure, even its cell membranes are built differently from ours, softer, more fluid, engineered so they do not freeze solid or stiffen in the cold and the crush. Every part of this animal, from its molecules outward, has been redesigned for the underworld. And what it hunts are tiny shrimp-like creatures called amphipods that swarm the trench floor in the millions. The snailfish drifts down, feels them scatter, and inhales them whole. A gentle ghost, feeding in the deepest fish habitat on Earth. And then there is the question nobody expects. How does something like this have babies in a place like this? The answer is one of the strangest details of all. The deepest snailfish lay unusually large eggs, some nearly a centimeter across, enormous for such a small fish. Each egg is a lifeboat, packed with enough yolk to carry the young through their earliest, most fragile days in the crushing dark. There is no nursery here, no shallow, safe water to grow up in. A hadal snailfish is born already at the bottom of the world, already under 800 atmospheres, and it never leaves. The adults gather in loose groups on the trench floor, dozens of them, drifting together over the sediment. For an animal we assumed lived alone in the void, that was a shock. Down there, at the edge of what life can do, the ghosts have company. For a long time, we thought this was the end of the story. The snailfish at the bottom of the world, the deepest that life could reach. But the snailfish is not the deepest living thing. Not even close. Because below the fish line, below the wall that no vertebrate can cross, the trench keeps going. 2,000 more meters of darkness. And it is not empty. Something is down there in the place the fish cannot follow. And there are countless numbers of them. Drop a piece of bait to the bottom of the deepest trench, and within minutes it is buried. Not in fish, but in a writhing, seething mass of amphipods. Thousands of them, appearing out of nowhere in the dark. These are the true rulers of the hadal zone. Pale, armored, shrimp-like scavengers, some no bigger than a grain of rice, and some near the bottom the length of your hand. In a place with almost no food, they have become the cleanup crew of the abyss. The big ones are called supergiants, and nobody fully understands why they grow so large down here where food is scarce. It breaks one of the basic rules of biology, and the trench is full of broken rules. A normal amphipod on a beach is the size of a fingernail. The supergiants of the deepest trenches can be longer than your hand, 30 centimeters of pale, armored scavenger, gliding through water that would kill you instantly. Growing giant in a starving desert of dark. Nobody has a full explanation. It may help them store food, or survive the cold, or simply live longer between meals. When a whale dies far above and its body finally reaches the bottom, these swarms strip it to bone. When nothing dies, they wait, for months, for years, their bodies built to survive on almost nothing, then to feast when death finally falls from the sky. The most common trench amphipod does something almost unbelievable. It eats wood and metal. Its gut contains an enzyme that lets it digest the sunken fragments of trees washed out to sea, and it has been found with aluminum in its body, slowly corroding the metal for the trace nutrients inside. Think about how desperate that is. In a place with almost no food, evolution has produced an animal that can survive on the one thing that occasionally sinks all the way down. Waterlogged wood from distant forests, riding the currents out to sea and finally settling in the deepest trench. A creature that eats the drowned remains of the land. The enzyme that makes this possible is now being studied in laboratories, because breaking down wood efficiently is something human industry desperately wants to do. Once again, the answer to a problem on the surface may be hiding in the gut of a creature at the bottom of the sea, where we never thought to look. And here is where the story turns dark. When scientists analyze these amphipods, the deepest animals on Earth, in the most remote place that exists, they found them saturated with industrial poison. PCBs, banned chemicals from the last century, at concentrations higher than in crabs from the most polluted rivers on the planet. On the floor of the Challenger Deep, the deepest point in all the oceans, one of the deepest dives ever made found a plastic bag, resting in the sediment 11 kilometers down. There is no longer anywhere on Earth we have not reached. Even here, even at the bottom of everything. And it is not just visible trash. When researchers dissected trench amphipods, they found plastic fibers inside the bodies of the animals themselves, in the guts of creatures at the deepest point on the planet. Every single amphipod they examined from the very bottom contained plastic. Every one. The poison gets down here the same way food does. It falls. Chemicals dumped decades ago bind to particles, drift out to sea, and sink with the marine snow into the trenches, where they concentrate, trapped in the deepest bowls on Earth with nowhere left to go. The hadal zone has become the final sink for humanity's waste. The bottom of the world is now its dustbin. And yet the amphipods keep thriving. They eat our poison, carry our plastic, and swarm every carcass that falls. Millions of them in the crushing black, outlasting everything. If there is one lesson the deep sea teaches over and over, it is this: life is far harder to kill than we imagine, and it was here long before us. But the amphipods are still animals. They still have legs, guts, armor. Below even them, at the very deepest point, life strips down to something far simpler and far older. Something that was here long before animals existed at all. 10,935 meters. The Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. The single deepest point in every ocean on Earth. If you dropped Mount Everest into it, the peak would still be 2 kilometers underwater. Down here, on the deepest ground that exists, the dominant life form is not a fish or a shrimp. It is a single cell, but a single cell the size of your fist. They are called xenophyophores, and they carpet the floor of the trench. Even measuring this place is a battle. The pressure is so immense that it physically compresses the water, changing how sound moves through it, so the first depth readings were slightly wrong for decades. Getting the true number required correcting for the weight of 11 kilometers of ocean pressing the sea itself into a denser state. The deepest point is so extreme it warps the tools we use to measure it, and its scale is almost impossible to hold in your mind. Commercial planes cruise at around 10 kilometers up. Flip that distance downward into the ocean, and you are still not quite at the bottom of the Challenger Deep. There is a place in the sea as far below the waves as a jetliner flies above the ground, and it is inhabited. A xenophyophore is one of the largest single-celled organisms known to exist. It builds a delicate, intricate shell around itself from grains of sediment, and inside, it is just one cell with hundreds of nuclei, but no body, no organs, no brain. And it thrives exactly where nothing complex can. Some of these single cells sculpt shells so elaborate they look engineered: spirals, plates, branching lattices, built grain by an organism with no brain to design them. On the deepest floor on Earth, where animals can barely cling to life, these ancient cells form entire cities, and other tiny creatures shelter inside their abandoned shells. In some parts of the trench, the seafloor is carpeted with them, hundreds in a single square meter. The deepest large life on the planet is not a predator or a giant. It is a quiet, brainless cell that has been perfecting the art of survival since before animals existed. And below even the xenophyophores, inside the mud of the trench floor, and down into the rock beneath it, there is bacteria. Vast, slow colonies of single cells, living off chemistry, packed into the sediment in numbers beyond counting. Some of these microbes may not divide for hundreds or thousands of years. They live so slowly that the line between alive and dead almost blurs. But they are alive. At the bottom of the world, in crushing dark and cold, life refuses to stop. And it does not even stop at the seafloor. Drill down into the rock beneath the trench, and the microbes keep going hundreds of meters into solid stone, living off the chemistry of the rock itself. There is a whole biosphere hidden inside the crust of the planet, sealed in darkness, that may hold a huge fraction of all the living cells on Earth. These are the true extremophiles, the organisms that love the extreme, and their existence has quietly rewritten one of the biggest questions in science. Not where can life survive, but where can it not? So far, almost everywhere we have looked on this planet, No matter how hostile, we have found something already living there. This is the real ending of the descent. Not a monster, not a giant, but a floor that looks empty and is secretly teeming. A place where life has been stripped down to its most stubborn, ancient, unbreakable form. And it raises a staggering question. If life can survive here, in darkness, in cold, in pressure that destroys machines, then the places in our universe that could hold life just multiplied. The bottom of our own ocean is a preview of moons and worlds we have not yet reached. Far out in our own solar system, moons like Europa and Enceladus are wrapped in ice, hiding vast dark oceans beneath. Oceans under enormous pressure, with no sunlight, warmed only by chemistry from below. For a long time we assumed nothing could live in a place like that. But that description, crushing pressure, eternal darkness, no sun, life running on chemistry, is not alien at all. It is the bottom of our own Pacific. The hadal zone is the closest thing on Earth to those buried alien seas. And it is absolutely full of life, which means the deepest, most hostile place on our own planet may be the best evidence we have that we are not alone. The ghost fish and the giant cells at the bottom of the trench are not just survivors. They are a message about the whole universe. So how do we know any of this? Almost no human has ever seen the hadal zone with their own eyes. The pressure is too extreme, the cost too high, the danger too real. Almost everything we know, we learned from machines. Scientists build landers, steel frames carrying cameras, bait and sensors, and drop them over the side of a ship. They fall for hours, unspooling into the dark, until they hit the bottom. Then they wait, filming, recording, alone in the deepest places on Earth. Hours later, the lander drops its weights and floats back to the surface, carrying its footage. And when scientists play it back, they see the ghosts arrive. The snailfish drifting into frame, the amphipods swarming, life appearing out of nothing. Even finding the bottom is hard. For a long time, we did not truly know which trench was deepest or by how much. The numbers shifted with every new survey. It took decades of sonar and specially built submersibles just to measure the shape of these underwater canyons. Canyons deeper than any mountain on land is tall. In 2019, a single explorer set out to personally dive to the deepest point of all 5 oceans, the 5 deeps. At the bottom of the Mariana, his submersible touched down deeper than anyone had ever confirmed, and sat on the floor of the Challenger Deep while creatures drifted past the window. He became one of only a tiny handful of humans in history to see that place with their own eyes. And even on those historic dives, cameras caught animals no one could identify. Gelatinous, translucent shapes, drifting at the edge of the lights. Creatures that have never been named, never been caught, never been seen again. The deepest places are still genuinely unknown. But there is a cruel catch. You cannot bring these creatures up alive. The snailfish is built for 800 atmospheres of pressure. Lift it toward the surface, and the pressure holding its body together vanishes. The cells swell. Its tissues fail. It dissolves on the way up, killed by the absence of the very force that would kill us. The few specimens we have were captured in special pressurized traps, rushed to the surface and frozen within minutes. Each one is a scientific treasure. We know more about the surface of the moon than about the animals living at the bottom of our own planet. When a whole, intact hadal snailfish finally reached a lab, scientists mapped its entire genetic code and found the fingerprints of its transformation written right there. Genes for making normal bone switched off. Genes for repairing pressure-damaged proteins multiplied. A vision system gutted and abandoned. It is one of the clearest examples ever found of a body rewritten, gene by gene, to conquer an impossible place. Its story is written in a language we are only beginning to read, a manual for surviving the unsurvivable. Understanding it could teach us how to protect proteins in medicine, how to preserve organs, how life itself holds together under stress. The ghost at the bottom of the sea may end up helping us up here, on the surface, in ways we cannot yet imagine. More than 80% of the ocean has never been explored. The hadal trenches, these deepest scars, remain some of the least understood places in the known universe. Every single expedition finds species that have never been seen before, which means the ghost fish we started with, the deepest fish ever filmed, may not hold that record for long. Somewhere in the dark, deeper than we have looked, something else may be waiting. Let us return one last time to our fish, the pale, gentle ghost at 8,300 meters, feeling its way through the dark, feeding on tiny shrimp, asking nothing of the world above. It will never see the sun. It will never feel warmth. It will live its entire life in a place that would kill almost anything else in an instant. And to the snailfish, this crushing underworld is simply home. Comfortable, safe, quiet. We tend to think of ourselves as the survivors, the tough ones, the ones who conquered the planet. But we cannot survive 1 minute at the depth where this small fish lives its whole peaceful life. Strip away our submarines and our steel and our technology, and we are one of the most fragile animals on Earth. We cannot go deep. We cannot go without light for long, or without warmth, or without a narrow band of pressure and air. The snailfish needs none of it. Measured by sheer toughness, it has us beaten by kilometers. There is a strange humility in that. The most powerful species this planet has ever produced would die instantly in a place a small, soft, brainless-looking fish calls home. The deep does not care about intelligence or tools or ambition. It rewards only one thing: the stubborn, ancient ability to endure. The deepest parts of our own world are not lifeless. They are not empty. They are full of creatures more resilient than we will ever be, living quietly in the dark, in a kingdom of pressure, since long before we existed. 70% of this planet is ocean. Most of it is deep, and most of that deep is a world we have barely glimpsed. A vast, dark, living place, hidden beneath the thin, bright surface we call home. The next time you look at the sea, remember what is down there. Remember the ghost at the bottom, feeling its way through the eternal night, the deepest fish on Earth, alive in a place that should be impossible. And we have barely begun to look. Every time a camera goes down into a trench we have not surveyed, it comes back with something new, a shape, a movement an animal science has no name for. The deepest fish record has been broken again and again in just the last few years, each time by scientists willing to drop a camera a few hundred meters deeper than anyone before. Somewhere out there, in a trench no lander has ever touched, there may be a fish living even deeper than our ghost, or a creature that is not a fish at all, doing something no biologist has imagined. The bottom of the sea is the largest unexplored space on Earth, and it is right here, beneath the water we swim in every summer. So the next time you stand at the edge of the ocean and look out at that calm, flat surface, remember what it is hiding. Kilometers of darkness, mountains and trenches, and life. Strange, patient, unkillable life, filling the deepest, coldest, most crushing places on the planet, exactly where we were sure nothing could ever survive. The ghost at the bottom is still down there right now, in the eternal night, feeling its way through the dark. It does not know we exist. It does not know it is the deepest fish on Earth. It only knows how to endure, in a place that should be impossible, calling the impossible home. If this journey to the bottom stayed with you, the next one goes somewhere stranger still, to the creatures that survive not the deepest cold, but the most impossible heat on Earth. Until then, watch the water. You never know what is looking back.